be patient with media right now. There's a lot of change happening. Work with your agencies, work with your clients, and really realize that we are in this moment of evolution, and this year will be a telling one.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Have an in-depth advertising discussion in store with you today with Samir Balwani, CEO and founder of Qury, growth accelerator, author. Love the chats I've been having with you, Samir. Looking forward to going into detail today. You are a very clear thought leader in the space, so it's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm looking forward to talking with you about success among brands of all sizes based on our chats, but thought we'd begin with your background and let you tell the story of your career into the creation of Qury.
Yeah, so I've been in marketing specifically for luxury e-com goods for almost 15 years now. So I started an agency where we supported brands like LVMH. I was head of marketing at a online publisher called Stylecaster. And then most recently, before starting Qury, I was helping build brand strategy at American Express. So I've kind of run the gamut of agency, startup, Fortune 500, and realized I love the entrepreneurial spirit of agency owners the best. And so went back down to agency life and haven't looked back ever since. Qury was started around the idea that being a true subject matter expert on the paid media side is a valuable skill that a lot of mid-market brands don't get access to. And that's because there's a lot of overarching full service agencies that are great at what they do, but they don't specialize in any one thing. And so we started Qury with the idea that we are going to be the best paid media agency for growing e-com businesses, and we're going to help them better understand their data, their audiences, their business, and really help them unlock scale and profitable growth.
All easy things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I joke because it's a never-ending task, and all comes from the right planning, going after the right KPIs, the right metrics, looking at the KPIs, the key performance indicators. I know you don't like to point at return on ad spend, and you have some perspectives on why it's really not the holy grail of advertising metrics. We're big fans of the algorithm, talking about each point and what it means for the next stage. Can you speak a bit about that and how you set campaigns up for success?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that was really frustrating when we first started the agency is we'd see a lot of other agencies and brands, expecting a 20x return on ad spend, a 15x return on ad spend, and some of them are looking at attributed data, some of them are looking at attribution is a whole nother conversation as a whole. But
Sure,
let's just align on everyone's looking at the same data and still expecting some crazy return on ad spend numbers. And our thought process on this was, paid media is one of those areas where you can be very nimble and be very thoughtful around not only capturing demand as it exists today, but creating demand for the brand tomorrow. And so when we see brands that have really high ROAS, the second part of that sentence is for now. And that's the piece that people forget. It's, I've got a really high ROAS for today. That's going to start to plateau and start to degrade over time because you're not introducing anyone new to the brand and you're not investing in it holistically. Now, if you told me, hey, Samir, we have a 20x ROAS because we figured out that our way to build brand demand is we actually pay a celebrity and that's more cost effective than investing in advertising. Great, I'm on board with that, but that's not usually the case. Usually the case is we have really high ROAS and we're very profitable. And again, it goes to for now. And there's also growth that comes from that. So I think brands, especially, given the market where it is right now, are leaning towards higher ROAS. They're expecting more from their paid media. And I think that that's fine. But the reality of the situation is then we have to look at growth and what does growth look like? and you can't have both. You can't have scale and profitability all at the same time. It's really understanding what that balance is going to be and how you want to scale.
And what's best for that brand for tomorrow, like you're mentioning, not just putting some quick numbers on the board for today, looking like a hero, and then running into those issues because it wasn't built to continue to grow.
Yeah, and that's actually been one of the reasons why we've been able to hold on to our clients for so long, is because they get on board with this idea of we're going to slowly grow over time, and there's no cliff at the end of the day, right? Like I think that's what would keep me up at night is like that ROAS going from 20 to 3 or 20 to 1, and then that's that. So modeling those out and making sure you're aware of it is really valuable. It goes into the second thing that we really talk about is media forecasting and media planning is one of those things that a lot of agencies are not good at. And if you're running paid media and are not good at media planning and forecasting, that's an overarching problem because then you're not looking at it long term. You're only looking at it as it stands tomorrow. We'll forecast out 12 months because I want to be able to show to you that the investments you're making today are going to pay off over the next 12 months.
And how do you predict the future? And essentially, how product and revenue forecasts can really launch a brand to new levels. I know we'll look at the full range of the algorithm, as I mentioned, impressions, clicks, conversions. A lot of people don't want to look at CPMs and impressions. Founders say, I'm just interested in ROAS. I'm different. I just want results. But for us, we see where we can make shifts here that make a big difference at the bottom line. And how do you continue to predict while growing, while spending more, driving more e-com conversions with uncertainty that could occur in months ahead?
Yeah, so the uncertainty piece is definitely difficult to forecast out for. So we try and do our best to account for that. And we'll have indicators to help us better understand that. So I'll give you an example. We'll look at Labor Day performance year over year to get a better understanding of what holiday performance may be year over year. So, is that brand going to have a really strong holiday, or is it going to have a little bit of a weaker holiday because their Labor Day was a canary in the coal mine, for instance.
Sure.
And so we're really just trying to peel back indicators like that for overarching uncertainty. But tactically, how do you create a good media forecast? So a good media plan and forecast should have a few things. One, it should have a breakdown of your key investments across channel and customer stage. How much are you spending on brand awareness? How much are you spending on product consideration? And then how much are you spending on conversion? You should also have a section on product loyalty. It's like re-engagement. So how much are we spending on advertising to get someone that's already a customer to purchase again? All of that needs to be built out. And then to your point, Jason, like CPMs, click-through rates, CPCs, those are all really important. You need to model it out. We know CPMs will grow at least 10% year over year. So like model it out. For some of our clients, they're seeing explosive growth on the CPM side because there's a lot more money flowing into the digital advertising side. So some categories are seeing 40, 50% increases in CPMs. And as you can imagine, that's causing a lot of downhill impacts or downstream impacts in terms of how the campaigns are performing. We're looking at click-through rate so we can make sure that creative is resonating and the audiences are resonating, and then going all the way down to conversion rate, as well as AOV. Put all of those numbers together and you get a good sense of how much you're going to make at each stage by each channel, and you can shift money around accordingly to make sure that you're actually getting the most impact. I will say, we touched on attribution early on. So a lot of our forecasts are based on last click data because it is unique purchases. So there's no overlap. With GA4 and us having to focus more on data-driven, as well as tools like Rockerbox, which we use for a lot of multi-touch attribution. We've started to rethink around how we forecast out the actual channel metrics and ROAS numbers. So working with our clients to say, hey, what is your single source of truth? Where do you want to come come to the table with. And so for some of our ecom brands, that's Shopify, some of them it's GA4, and some of them, it's Rockerbox or some other multi-touch attribution tool. But it's really forecasting in the language that the customer will understand or the client will understand, as well as making sure that it is a diagnostic for your media team to be able to point to and say, this is working, this isn't working. Here's what we're doing to fix it. This is what we're going to stop doing. Or, hey, we thought this channel was going to do a lot better than we thought it is. We're pulling all of the money out because it's not doing what it needs to do. And we're going to reallocate that. But you can't have those conversations if you don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah. Need to be using the same measuring stick as the client. So like you said, whether it's GA4, Shopify, whatever analytics, need to have that single source of truth. I think it could be difficult to speak about where traffic's coming from in general. The other category, direct category, where's what, being produced by, and not taking into account conversion windows. Someone clicks and then days later, week later. I know it's even tougher for us when we're running on a platform where we can only put in a Google, or we'll say Meta pixel, and then we're limited to some of the holes in the data there. At times, we think we're only getting about 30% of the conversions from Meta, encompassing the mobile users. So how we speak to that, how we talk about vanity metrics versus acting towards pockets of performance, how we could continue to scale, and if we miss it, we're kind of missing out on that traffic and where it's going from there. And I just want to comment further on that. I love how you're pointing out the cost of the CPM growth. I mean, 40 to 50% for some verticals. That means it's a 40 to 50% higher cost per acquisition. And you take that into account to the average order value, the return on ad spend's not there. This all makes a very big difference for ads at any stage of the funnel. Like you said, with the key investments across awareness, consideration, investment, and the loyalty spends, being able to figure out what's coming from where, being able to have the right agency-client relationship so that it's a very clear, trusted communication line towards what's going to be best for the brand tomorrow, not just trying to make the metrics look the best that they can today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll give you a perfect example of that. We take a huge dip in ROAS in October, and in some cases, a lot of our clients are actually not profitable in October. And why do we do that? It's because we really want to prospect out and create new audience sets for as we come into November, December. So Q4 holiday is really important, and we want to make sure that we're actually reaching everyone we possibly can. And so a lot of prospecting happens in October, and it's not profitable prospecting. So.
Yeah, but being able to know that, hey, we are building a bigger retargeting pool, just prospecting in November, December is going to look that much better as a result. We have to both be on board for this, but here's why we're playing for it.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because, I alluded to it earlier on, but as consumers have become more thoughtful around where they spend, and also they are spending in other areas like travel and restaurants and things like that, more so than previously. It's really interesting to see how long those touch points have become. So whereas in peak COVID, you'd see something online and you'd buy it without thinking. Now, it is a much more thoughtful purchase, and you are thinking about things, and we're doing a lot more touch points than we normally would. And that's really messing up some of the attribution and some of the results as well, just overall.
Sure. But it's good to dispel the misconceptions. I definitely think the attribution conversation is an important one. I'm glad you brought that up, and it's awesome to hear you guys spend time there. What are 5 other common mistakes? I like to say 5, have a list, but what are other things that you see that can actually stifle brand growth in advertising? They're there for the right place to scale and to be able to get there with smart expenses. But what are some that work against the brand?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is honestly just not being organized. So paid media is a math game. It's kind of like a financial advisor. It's more around where are we going to invest your funds, and obviously creative plays a big impact of it.
Sure.
And so it's really on us to make sure that we're asking for the right creative and doing the right briefs. So all that I think is an element of it, but really being organized. So that media plan and forecast, having it across all elements of the customer journey, not just being like, oh yeah, this is how much we're spending, and like, cool, like this is what's going to happen, but forcing the conversation around brand awareness spend and literally what that's going to look like while it drives zero ROAS, and not being tempted to just cut it right away, right?
Sure.
So having that conversation early on and literally writing it out so everyone's committed to it, I think is probably one of the biggest mistakes most brands make. The second one is really around campaign performance tracking. So we talked a little bit about this around attribution, but having a methodology and making sure you communicate that method, like making sure you communicate your expectations to your agency and vice versa, is really important. And so making sure that you have an expectation of what campaign performance needs to look like, how you're going to measure it. A lot of times the missing link is marketing never talks to finance and finance never talks to marketing. And so we'll always get these annual plans that come from finance, and they always have some unrealistic expectations, and we'll like dig deep and be like, well, how'd you get to them? We're like, the finance team will be like, well, you grew 100% in November, so we just assume that you can do that all year long. And it's like, no, like someone needs, there's a conversation that needed to be happening here. And then vice versa, like on the marketing side, the number of times that we've had the situation where the marketing person will be like, yeah, so we just ran to a 0.5 ROAS because we figured that revenue was more important. And it's like, well, let's make sure we validate that, and let's make sure that people really want to see are the finance teams on board with that, and that they're excited about the concept of there being a halo and that we're going to be doing brand awareness spend and what that looks like. We really have the concept of no surprises, and that's not only for our client but the internal teams as well. Everyone needs to be on board. So campaign performance and having a very clear expectation of what that's going to be. I also really think that a big gap for a lot of brands is they do a good job of testing creative and like testing very specific things. So we'll always see the red button, green button, blue button, or this background versus that background. And while that kind of testing is really good, you should do it. That's not a differentiated test. So for us, we really like to test larger things. What's the offer? What's the brand message? What's the overarching thing that we're testing that can be rolled out beyond just paid media, right? Like something that really helps us better understand what motivates your customer more so than what was just the subconscious motivator in that moment. And the reason why is because people change pretty regularly. And so I'd rather know that this message really resonates with your market and your audience versus this red button works today and may not work in a month or two. And so that, I think that's one of the things is I almost want to say people are overcomplicating A/B testing and just testing in general. And it really should be more like larger, more impactful tests, because that's what's going to really move the needle forward. And the last one is just not exploring new technologies or not setting aside budget to explore new technologies. One of the big ones is in our media forecast, we set aside between 5 and 10% of the budget for just new testing, like new channels, new tools, new systems. When we work with a SaaS partner, we'll say, hey, look, we will not sign an annual contract. We will sign a 90-day contract, and we want to prove it out. We want to know what works, what doesn't work, right? We're going to test a new audience. We want to make sure that the cost of that audience and that audience set, that data set, we talked about this from a programmatic standpoint. It's like death by a million paper cuts, because you pay an additional dollar CPM here, an additional dollar CPM here. And next thing you know, you might as well have just hit all of the United States and had called waste, and it would have been cheaper than trying to get ultra targeted. So finding the balance is really what's important. How broad do you want to go? But then also, when is it worth to go really, specific from an audience set? I think that's a big one that not a lot of people think about.
Yeah. I was taught with programmatic early on, you almost want to cast wider nets at first show you, have the data show you what's working. Look for, again, those pockets of performance and scale towards those. It could be a tier 1 site list. It could be a set of keywords for contextual targeting, but a broad, open site list, maybe a blacklist of some sites given the type of client, versus going too narrow. And I learned it early on a women's fashion campaign where we saw real estate sites converting the best. Your, Zillow, Trulia type sites. This is years back. But we would have never included that in a media plan for a woman's fashion client. Later, we're able to, understand the psychology, high-priced item, quick impulse purchase right next to it. Real estate, someone's always looking at their next product tier above that in terms of pricing, something outside of their reach. But if we went too narrow, we would have never saw that. So it's like your point of maybe it is better to have an open targeting filter on some of these platforms, let the AI do its thing, or be able to really pull apart the analytics and determine where it's coming from. We try to set up tests to give us the right data to optimize so we can tell ourselves where to go next. I know you guys have very advanced systems for ad testing and experimentation, and that's been key for your e-commerce campaigns and hitting massive amounts of growth. What are the best approaches towards testing in your eyes, and how have they been effective for the brands you work with?
Yeah, I think you spoke to it perfectly. You start broad because you really need benchmarks. The key thing that I think people forget is you need to know what you're testing against, and you need to know if it was actually improved or not. And so the first step is just making sure that you actually have that broad understanding of what that channel should be doing and how it impacts. We create a testing plan for each of our clients, and that outlines out again, it goes back to the media forecast. So we look at a media plan and say, okay, we actualize this media plan on a week-to-week basis, and our CPM is blowing up. We already assumed that it would grow, but it's growing even beyond that. What are the tests that we can implement to actually target that CPM? So before we start to shift money out, it's how do we actually try and diagnose this problem and bring it down? So maybe it's a audience is wrong, or maybe the creative needs to be improved so that the algorithm sees, oh yeah, no, people are clicking on it, and now give us preferential CPMs. So really looking at all of it from what is the KPI we're testing, and then what is the battery of tests that we're going to run, for how long, and what's the expectation, right? So we need to know that we're not it's not okay that the CPM be high and the answer, we're testing it. At some point, we're going to pull budget from it. And the understanding is just when, and what do we want to do there. So that's our general framework for how we test. And then we build it out by impact, confidence, and ease. So how impactful will this test be? So are we targeting CPM, and do we think we can lower it by 20%? I mean, that's huge. Are we targeting conversion rate? Do we think we can increase conversion rate by 10%? Those are big impacts, right? So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing those. Confidence is, how confident are we in that this test will actually be successful? We want to prioritize the tests where we think the outcome is going to be positive, because there is a cost to testing. When you run a test and you do it, it's worse than the original. You offset some of your traffic and some of your budget to a test that performed bad. So you want to make sure that when you are testing, you're testing into the ones that you're most confident to actually improve. Have your wild shots, your moonshots out there, the ones that you're like, hey, I don't know, but just know that you're going into it from that there's a cost against it. And then ease. How much lift is it on the client and on the agency to actually bring it to market? Are we asking for net new creative? Is there a new photo shoot that needs to be done? Those are harder tests, and the confidence and impact better be there. Otherwise, we're just not going to action on those. So I think that's, again, it just goes back to really being organized and having a process for how do you actually keep track of all these things. It's media strategy. What are you doing? Media plan and forecast. What do the numbers look like? Test and learn strategy. How are we incrementally driving growth? Those three working together are what lead brands to actually scale.
Absolutely. And the organization part, so key, as you're mentioning, this isn't something you can just throw any media buyer in. Actually, I should ask you, how do you measure media buying talent?
Yeah.
Do you have any analogies or anything that you speak about with your team? What's the difference of an entry-level marketer trying to set up an ad campaign without your systems, without your folders for organization, without your background? What's it going to be like for them to try to see success versus a group that manages, millions in ad spend?
Yeah, I think the best uh, way I can describe it is everyone has an oven. It's no different than a media buying platform. Everyone has access to the media buying AI. You can go and turn on a Performance Max campaign tomorrow or an Advantage Plus campaign on Meta, and they'll take your money, no problem. And it's similar to how everyone has access to an oven. But a French baker is a lot better than me. And so that's kind of my thought process on this as well is someone that's really specialized in it is going to be able to use that oven in a way that gets you the best results. They understand the ingredients that go into it, how long it should stay in the oven, and what the output's going to be. They also have an understanding of what tastes good. We all understand what tastes good, but if you hear like a wine connoisseur speak about wine, it's a very different conversation. Like I know what good wine tastes like, but wine connoisseurs are a whole different level. And that's exactly what you want from your media buying team. You want them to know exactly what goes into the algorithm, how it works, how to test, how long to test for, what to test, what channels to invest in, and then also what success should look like. We all have assumptions around what success should look like, but you should be leaning on your media buying team to help you actually validate what your assumptions on success and what actual industry success looks like. So I think that there's a lot that media buyers need to go through. They need to understand data. They need to understand the financials of an e-com business and just how that works. They need to understand audience and AI as a whole, like how the algorithm actually makes decisions. And then on top of that, no different than a chef, they need to have systems and processes in place that help them take their natural skills and bring them to a whole new level. And I think that's what differentiates a really good media buying agency from someone trying to do it at home, and even just like a starting out media agency. It's that final piece of the methodologies and frameworks that really accelerate a media buyer.
I've heard the analogy before of a Ferrari and a professional driver and what the vehicle can open up. I like yours even more because everyone has the oven and everyone's tasted food that is beyond words and has heard that wine connoisseur use words that they don't generally review in on a daily basis. So I think that's such a perfect way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really it's funny because to take it one step further, it's also you want the guy that's not only looking at the oven and going, "Man, I got an oven." You want the guy that's like looking at the oven and going, "Oh, I got a sous vide, and this is what we're trying out today." And it's like, what's the next thing? What's the next interesting tool? I'll give you a perfect example of this. We were some of the early users of Performance Max. And man, we got really great results early on because we were one of the first ones into Performance Max, and CPMs were really low, and Google was really excited about getting people in, so they didn't take so much margin on Performance Max campaigns. And we made some brands a lot of money in the first 6 months of PMax being live. And lo and behold, now PMax doesn't perform nearly as well as it was last year, same time last year. And there's high competition. People are using it pretty aggressively. Google probably has their margins because they've got enough usage that people are using it. And so it's really trying to identify what is that next item, what's that next strategy. And I purposely don't use what's that next tactic. It's what's that next strategy. Because if you just go into a whack-a-mole of tactics, that's you're going to see growth that spikes and then comes back down and spikes and comes back down. It's really how do you build long-term success that grows over time. So it's really strategic vision over tactical prowess.
I love it. I love it. And what else has allowed you guys to separate yourself from other fashion, other e-commerce brands, when you're acting on behalf of the client? I know it's a fierce marketplace, and real retail competition as a whole, let alone for fashion, is aggressive to say the least. How have you guys been able to find success and emerge past the others?
Yeah, I think for brands that are trying to break out from their marketplace partners or wholesale partners, it's really tough. you're competing against your own products or competitive products at the same time. So there's an element of just really understanding what products you want to keep on your site versus what's going to go on marketplace. And this is a year where we're actually seeing a bigger impact of marketplaces on fashion brands than we've ever seen before. And it's because there's a lot of deep discounts as we come into the end of the year, and people have been wielding the discount strategy for quite a while, and it's starting to get discount fatigue. And so retailers have caught on that customer experience really matters. 2-day shipping really matters. Good return rates and guarantees really matter. All of those things are what can separate a brand out. And so now it's looking at your retail partners and marketplace partners and saying, do we at least match them on customer experience? And do we actually make the buying experience as good as shopping online somewhere else as our site? And if you answer no, then why wouldn't I just buy somewhere else? It's really easy to see where products exist across the board now. And there is a benefit to buying retail because you can buy multiple brands all at the same time, and especially for fashion apparel. That's tough. Retailers are becoming savvy to that. And so you have to figure out how do you differentiate from that, and so that customer journey, customer experience, unique one-of-a-kind product sets that no one else gets access to, that are only existing on your site. Really identifying what is that thing that's going to make a customer want to purchase from you versus a retailer. We always talk about brands always say we want them to purchase from us because we want to have a relationship with the buyer, right? And
sure,
a lot of brands I just want to know who they are so I can market and sell to them more, right? And I wish more brands would actually take that and be like, no, I actually want to have a relationship with our buyers, with the people that purchase from us. I know this customer always buys as soon as a new product launches. Well, that's an amazing early access VIP customer. Do you know how big of a brand loyalist they would be if you're like, hey, I seen that, we see that you purchase right away. We'd love to invite you in for a private shopping event. Could be online. Doesn't even need to be in person. Take that one level further and start to really do something with the idea of, I know who my customer is. I know how they purchase. I know what they do. Because if you don't, you might as well just let them buy from the retailer and call it a day, because to them, it doesn't matter. And so if you have that access, if you have that, it's your job to make sure you're maximizing it. And that's what's going to separate out the best fashion brands from getting eaten up by the retailers.
I think that's so well said. And I definitely feel that experience when I'm buying from a brand directly, and a sense that they know me. And, taking that extra time, doing the extra research, having a closed loop system with the audience. So you're actually determining, from each side of it, you were breaking it all the way down to the color of the button as part of a conversion rate optimization or ad click-through exercise, what matters to them and how it stands out and how you're able to continue to deliver on that and how it changes from 1 month, let alone 1 year to the next.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little things that need to get done, that need to be right to continue to scale and grow. Mm-hmm. It's there's some big strategic things, and then it's a matter of actually implementing all the little things and doing it well.
And that's what makes the difference on these big campaigns. Speaking of campaigns of all sizes, I want to ask you some questions to look to package actionable insights for listeners, and starting with testing. Like you mentioned, that's where it all happens, assuming this is the result of a strong plan with enough of a competitor audit, enough, findings in general about what the audience is responding to today. But what can listeners test out towards their own advertising campaigns? What have you seen to be particularly successful or worth exploring here in a second half of 2023? Yeah,
I think one of the things people have probably tested already and don't even realize it. One of the big things as we're getting into the end of the year is look at the delta between discounts and see if there's actually value in increasing your discounts. And what I say is look at your Memorial Day sales, look at your July 4th sales, look at your Labor Day sales, and any friends and family campaigns that you have running. And if one was a 10% discount, one was a 20% discount, one was a 30% discount, plot it out. and see what was the impact on conversion rate as you went across all of those things. Obviously, discount won't be the only thing that you changed, but take a look at the data and try to isolate that and get a better understanding of, does a higher discount actually drive higher conversion rate? Or did the 20% sale do the same as the 30% sale, and should you have just run a 20% sale, right? Because then you'll have an understanding of, okay, Q4, I'm gonna have to go deeper. Should I go 40% or was 30% enough? And give you an understanding of that. So that's one thing that I think a lot of brands should do, and just have a better understanding of that degradation of discount over time. The other one is, now is the time to do as much creative testing as possible. Test everything from video to imagery. Like, now is that time. Just make sure you really understand what's going to motivate someone to come to the site. Look at click-through rate. Look at engaged sessions on the site as soon as they get there. Really have an understanding of what is that campaign creative that's going to be helpful, and what creative type. So is it video? Is it instant experience on Facebook? Whatever may be the case. So definitely do that right now. Depending on your budgets, brand lift campaigns, like brand lift studies through Facebook, have been really interesting to just get a better understanding of, when you invest in Facebook brand, what does the actual, like Facebook advertising for brand awareness and reach, what is the long-term impact on the brand? As we get into prospecting season right now, now's a good time to run brand lift studies. You're already going to be investing in brand, so you might as well use this as an opportunity to do a brand lift study and see how valuable was that investment and did it actually lift the brand. So I'd say those are probably three really easy, actionable, well, not easy, but those are three actionable things that you should probably be doing in the next 30 to 60 days.
Absolutely. Great recommendations. Looking at discounts, how much they're actually making a difference, the visuals, the video, graphics. Now is the time to test. And the brand lift studies, and going into further detail. I know you like going beyond just return on ad spend. So really looking at year over year, competitors, everything you can to see what's working, and what impact was actually present. Let's say a brand, marketer looks at it and it's not effective. Yeah. What are the best steps towards optimization? I look at real marketing talent among my own team, or other agencies with problem-solving abilities in many scenarios, coupled with math. The mathematical exercise, of course, because I do believe that it makes all of the right foundational aspects for the campaign itself. But how do you guys optimize? How have you been able to take campaigns from marginal performance or even no performance to case study level?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that problem solving and road mapping, right? It's, here are all the things that we're going to be doing, prioritized, and this is what our expected outcome is. So really creating a process around it and having a methodology by which we do it consistently, right? So it's interesting. It's the processes and methodologies allow us to do this at scale. And so it's not, we did this for one brand and great, we're done. We're doing this consistently across multiple brands at all times. And so that's where the process and methodology is really important. We also have a database of tests, right? Like, we've been doing this for a long time. So we know exactly, what tests have worked in the past, what we should be testing. Cool, you want to target CPM on Facebook? Great, here's 6 things that we've done in the past that have helped to increase, CPM. You should try that. We have an internal team members that are dedicated to just sharing and teaching us on new technologies. So, Shopify's going to launch a new product set. Great, let's talk about it. How does that impact us, and what are the gaps? Or, Meta is doing a new thing. Here's what we need to be knowing about it. Really keeping up with a lot of that is key. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of hiring an agency for a brand, right? There's so much to keep ahead of. There's just not enough time for an in-house marketer to do that and manage campaigns and continually test things. So that's one of the big benefits of an agency. And
you've pointed out to me on why agencies why brands use agencies because of those tests, because of the audiences, because of the cutting edge technology and approaches that are being used, and not just keeping yourself in your head as the marketing director, as the CMO at a brand, but being able to bring in these top of class tactics, top of class strategies.
Yeah, and to be able to look across your industry, right? You may look at it and go, "Oh man, I'm down this week, or I'm down this month. Everything's ending." And then you like talk to other people and you realize, okay, wait, no, everyone's down. It may not be something I did. It may just be the industry as a whole. Great, we're down now. What do we do about it? But just having benchmarks and a larger field of vision is really valuable. And helps guide you to the final answer sooner rather than later. And I think that's another element that gets lost also.
And I think it's such an important thing to mention, because you think of these big brands and hey, they can hire everybody they want and best at it, but it's still so important to be able to have agencies involved for that exact reason.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting. I think the larger the brand, the more valuable it becomes too, because you start to have your own internal silos, and agencies get the benefit of being able to like flow across silos, which is always nice. But the other element of it too is if you look at a lot of brands, they may have an in-house team and an agency. And why? It's because of those things. It's the rigor and the methodologies and the forward thinking and the point of views and the outsiders' viewpoint on things that they bring to the table that helps elevate a lot of those brands and helps them continue to scale.
Let's talk about that real quick. Scale. You've worked with massive brands. You've been quoted in top fashion podcasts and publishers, and spoken at the top universities and fashion schools. What have been the keys towards success for your campaigns? What have been any tips or examples of scale among your advertising?
Yeah, I mean, so we worked with a lot of really cool brands, which has been awesome. One of the big ones that I'd say is probably the most exciting recently was we helped Delsey, which is a luggage brand during COVID, scale and grow. They grew almost 140% in the middle of COVID. Wow. As a luggage brand was really exciting. The key element of that was really rigorous creative testing and messaging testing. We were realizing that people were thinking about and talking about travel very differently over that period, and the playbook needed to be thrown out. And so how quickly do we get to a good playbook real fast? So that was one. We've been working with Peak Design for a while and being able to scale their revenue consistently over time. So their successes go directly to the idea of really strong organizational what's our media forecast? What's our media plan? What's our media buying excellence? How do we actually drive on that? As well as helping them understand when it's time to invest in brand, and working with our creative partner to make sure that we do that in a meaningful way, and continue to see growth there. So those are some fun successes that we've had the opportunity of making come to life, and more to come.
That's awesome. Samir, I have some of the top media buyers on this podcast, and definitely have learned from this conversation with you and see why you are so successful at what it is that you do. I want to thank you for taking the time to hop on the podcast today. I know you're busy with a lot of these campaigns, and it's really a pleasure. As we begin to wrap up, what are some final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with, and what's the best way for them to get in contact with you if they want to learn more about Qury, if they want to learn more about your approaches, or just get in communication?
Yeah. So final thoughts, I'd say be patient with media right now. There's a lot of change happening. Lean on your agencies to help you understand everything from privacy rules to attribution rules to just even the old playbook on what Meta's role was, what Google's role was, how do we invest in YouTube or programmatic. All those are changing really rapidly right now, especially in the e-com world, with consumers changing how they purchase. So work with your agencies, work with your clients, and really realize that we are in this moment of evolution, and this year will be a telling one. So that's my final thought at a high level. How do you get in touch with me? So we are qry.com. We are query.com. We are qry.com. Go there, fill out the contact form. That's easy. Samir at wearequery.com. Easy. I answer all my emails. I love talking to people. So if you've got questions, if I can help in any way, just shoot me a note.
Awesome. And definitely recommend listeners to take Samir up on that invitation. Samir, thank you again for hopping on the podcast today.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. This was great.
Awesome. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Take care.